Welcome back to my series on Megalithic Osireion. So this is the amazing structure called the Osirion that is in Abydos in Egypt. So this is part 5. So we've looked at what the archaeologists have to say on this site, and we've looked at what the top independent researchers have to say on this site. So in this episode, we're going to look at the site again from a 3D modelling perspective. Then we're going to return to one of the top independent researchers that we've already visited, but who has just put out the most amazing video. So we're going to look at that. And we will visit the odd, smaller channel where we'll look at some of the comments that actually no one else has made. Let's start with a channel called ARCE National. If you're as impressed with these two brief clips that I'm going to show you, then please go to their channel and show them some love, because this is really mind-blowing. Well, that's a very, very hard act to follow, but we're going to continue on the theme of looking at the site from a 3D modelling perspective. And although I've already mentioned this creator, we're just going to revisit it because it's really great to get into the mindset of how it actually looked originally. Now, there's a few things in this model that I don't agree with. They've got the sarcophagus in the middle there, and they also have the middle of the roof completely open to the outside world, whereas I think it was only partially open, but that's really very minor. So this is a great model, and it really helps you to visualize what it looked like. It almost feels like you could just walk in and have a look around just like that. And here we have the channel of Richard Smith, where there has been some more really amazing 3D modelling. This model gives you a really good feel for those little niches around the outsides of the Osirion. You turn around and you see all the niches all around. Here, when it drops down, it's only dropping down to a water level that had been achieved when they were able to pump out the water. So that lower level that we're looking at is not the ground, it is a water level. Now we've just got a very brief clip from Lucid Trips, another small channel that's very well worth checking out.
The ceiling panels and all these alcoves, if you look at them, when they get to the wall, they do this.
Oh yeah, they bend.
So the ceiling is 3 inches higher than the wall part of the ceiling panel. So it goes thicker and then...
That is a really good observation, especially from a small channel. Hey, look who's talking. I'm only a small channel too. But hey, it really was a good observation. This photo shows it the best. It's almost like an upside down shower. You know, the bottom of the shower, how it has that ridge around it to make sure that the water doesn't go out. It's a bit like that, and it's like that in every single one of those little niches. As discussed at the start, we're now going to revisit Uncharted X. Just when I thought I had all the independent researchers sorted, that I'd collected all the best bits, Uncharted X goes and releases this amazing video. Anyway, there's a few clips. I so recommend it because it's a complete walkthrough of the Osirion, and it is fabulous. Please go watch it. I'll only show you a few clips, and they probably won't be in the same order as they were in the original video. This is just the order of relevance for what we're looking at, what we're building up to, should I say, in looking at the Osirion.
It's an island. Like, you're literally looking at, even zoom out a bit further, this whole thing's an island built on top of an aquifer that's 5 or 6 stories tall, made from granite.
Although what he just said is nothing new, he put it so beautifully into a nutshell of what the Osirion actually is. It's an island. And the next clip is an observation Ben made, and it's very relevant to my theory of what this site is all about. So this particular indentation, where people think was another pillar, is something that I will be discussing in my final episode, because something very important was sitting in that particular slot.
But it's inset slightly. Like, it's like this inset that runs around the edge of this. I'll even zoom out a bit more. Runs around the edge of this whole pillar base, and you'll find the same thing on these other pillars. So if we look at the base of this pillar, you see it's inset, right? It's inset in, so I think this was likely a pillar base.
The next is a discussion of the alcoves, or as I sometimes call them, niches.
Also, you can see all of the alcoves, those cells, alcoves, whatever you want to call them, about 6 feet wide or 7 feet wide and tall. Insets, they have tube drills in the holes there that are in the tops, so they had doors.
Take a look here at all of the second level blocks in between the alcoves. All of them along the line here, they're all a single piece. Sometimes the bottom level, you'll have a couple of blocks in there, but all of the second level blocks are a single piece. They have complex geometries. They curve in and around the doorway and then into the alcove and onto the back walls.
So they found keystones, and some of those keystones have had like the cartouche of Seti the First on them, like these locking keystones that sit on top of some of the blocks. And I've heard people say, well, that's proof that he built it, but I don't think it's any more proof that he built it any more than the hieroglyphs are proof that he built it.
Of course, I agree with that completely. I don't think Seti built it. I think he found it, restored it, probably, and added his own bits and pieces to it. And in fact, Yusuf seems to think the same, and he goes on to add to it that he thinks there are multiple layers.
3 different structures, 4, if we added the modern one with the terraces and this. And then we have the blocks of sandstone here. And then we have the blocks of limestone here, which is also built by the new kingdom. So this was probably the doing of Seti the First, and this was the doing of Merim Petah. Seems like what we found here, perhaps, I'm not positive 100%.
And they could well have accessed these keystone blocks and either inscribed them or even put these keystone blocks into place, because as we've seen from other examples, they're not exactly super tight fitting. And we know that whoever built the Osirion could make little inset blocks that are incredibly well fitting. We see many examples of this in the quartzite walls that make up the Osirion itself. And in fact, there are a couple of places where there are little inset blocks that just fit perfectly. What we see in the keystone blocks really doesn't match that.
In the final clip, Yusuf theorizes how some of the dates have been reached by the archaeologists.
Inscriptions can be added by those who inherited the site, and we, by mistake, used these inscriptions.
So we've only looked at a few clips from that video. I strongly recommend you find it and watch it, because it is so good, and you will really enjoy it. Okay, I will move on now. We are now going to briefly revisit Chuck from CF Apps 7865, because I hadn't seen this video earlier, and there's a few really good points in it.
Egyptologists will tell you that this Osirion was built by Seti I as a basement temple, and he built it in this style just to reflect an older time. And he built it in water. That's what Egyptologists will tell you. But that just doesn't seem to fly with me. Common sense tells you that these 2 temples were created at different times. So did Seti I want to build his temple and attach it to the older legacy of the Osirion. What I am thinking is he discovered this ancient temple and aligned his new temple just to attach his legacy to an older time.
And this is exactly how I view it too. So let's keep going.
And of course, in the temple of Seti I, we have some pretty unique things, and it's possible that he unearthed some ancient information in the Osirion, because in the temple of Seti I, we have an ancient kings list that hints of older times than the first dynasty, and we have some interesting glyphs on the walls in that temple of Seti.
Now, this is a really good point that I don't think anybody else has made, which is essentially that Seti found information when he also found the Osirion. And that information enabled him to get the very much longer King's List put on one of the walls. And it also may have somehow influenced that combination of hieroglyphs, which resulted in some weird-looking flying machines. And another one of the smaller channels, this one is the Bosnian Pyramid channel.
We don't know its real name. We don't know its real builders. I think this is the work of a more advanced civilization than what we had at the time. For a very long time, the desert sand would cover those very ancient structures. The new civilization would come, they would slowly start building their temples, you know, mastabas, enclosures, and so on. So it's cultural layer on top of each other. The interesting thing is, the most superior is the oldest.
And we're going to finish with a clip from a channel called Vlad 9VT, because it's a slideshow of some of the best photos of the site that's out there on the internet. And so I'll just put it on a bit fast, and we'll close with these photos. I think it's good to include Vlad 9VT because it's an excellent channel and I really didn't want to miss them out. So there we go. That's what we're finishing on. And next episode is going to be looking at basically pulling together all the little bits of evidence and trying to make sense of it all. And some of these last clips are the photos from the very early excavations in the early 1900s. So there's some very old photos in the slot, but it's all very fascinating, especially the photos where there is clearly a much, much lower water level.